Hey guys, welcome back to the Launch Your Real Life podcast, where we talk about life, money, and everything that you need as a person who's transitioning from total dependence on your parents and family to complete independence. Again, when I'm talking about financial independence, I'm talking about the ability to support yourself and pay your bills and be out on your own, not retirement financial independence. So just to clarify that. Um, I'm a financial coach, and I work with young people in this demographic, and also specifically with engaged and newly married couples, because they are pedal to the metal going through these changes, these transitions to complete independence. And so I meet with them in a one-on-one setting. But this podcast is just meant to be a free resource so that you can have a place to go, or you can have a place to refer your children or your friends who are going through this transition. Because really, I feel like there's not a whole lot of clarity out there when it comes to what you should be doing, how you should be moving towards this in a systematic way. I feel like in a lot of ways, um, kids are either just pushed out the door with little preparation, or on the other side, a lot of parents they're not sure how to help their kids spread their wings, quote unquote, and fly into the world. And so they end up letting them stay, and then it just turns into a years long journey of failure to launch, if I can use that term. So this podcast is meant to provide the steps, provide the practical tips, not only in strictly financial sense, but also in talking about life and community and engaging with your faith. So, in today's episode, I want to take a few minutes to talk about something that I'm still developing. This is by no means complete. But I realize that in the financial space, when you dive into it as much as I have, it's cool because there are people who have created plans and systems to help guide people through their financial journey. And what's really helpful about it, talk about the Ramsey baby steps, for instance. What's really helpful is, one, having a roadmap of the next right thing to do, but also as they're having their conversations with people on the telephone, or as they're communicating in their various platforms, they are able to have language for where people are. So people are able to call in and say, "Hey, I'm in step 3, I'm in step 2, I'm in step 7 of the baby steps." Right? Same with the Money Guys financial order of operations. When people ask questions, or when they are trying to find out more information from somebody, they are able to ask, um, what step are you in the financial order of operations? Um, and if you're not familiar with the financial order of operations, it's very similar to the baby steps with a few differences. And I'll actually have a couple of episodes on that in the future. But it's really helpful because people are able to say, "Well, I'm in step 2, I'm in step 3, whatever," and then we then know we have a snapshot of exactly where they are in their financial journey. Are they trying to pay off debt? Are they trying to save up for a house? Are they are they completely done saving um, for retirement? Do they have their emergency fund? We're able to tell exactly where they are based on these steps, quote unquote. And so, as I got to thinking about it, this transition from complete and total dependence to independence, when it comes to parents and family and students and children, right? It's so um, one of the reasons that doesn't already exist is because everybody's circumstances are so different. Okay, and I get that. And I realize it's a tall order. But I also know that there is no guide. People are just trying to figure out what's the next right move. And hey, my son is knocking at my office door. So uh, I'm going to pause this and I'll resume in just a minute. All right. So thank you for that. Um, now you kind of have a backstory on why I wanted to think through and create this idea of the phases of independence, as I'm calling it for now. Um, because I want people who I talk to, right, or who are listening to this podcast to be able to have language for where they are. I actually found this out when I was started working with students, because it was unclear to me how much income they had coming in versus their parents, versus how much they were spending of their own money on their bills versus their parents were subsidizing. And so I had to create these clarifying questions, and that is more or less where these came from. So I'm just going to give a brief overview, and then we're going to dive deeper into these in the future episodes. But I just wanted to give an overview. Excuse me. So phase one is just like you think. You're totally dependent. So think you're probably a junior, senior in high school. You don't have a job. This is before you have a job, and you don't have any income coming in outside of what might be coming from your parents or whatever. So you have zero income. You are learning. You are educating yourself on finance. You are preparing to start taking on some of those responsibilities. But while you are learning and in the strategy phase, because that's what that can be. People can think, well, I don't have any money, so I can't do anything. I'm not even, I'm still at home. I'm completely dependent. You can still strategize, right? In fact, having a strategy in place before you get a job, knowing what steps you want to take after that, can be hugely valuable. And again, it's something that not a lot of people think through. So if you are young and you are completely dependent and you have zero income, you take advantage of this to learn all you can about personal finance and start thinking about the next steps. So that's phase one. Phase two is you move into phase two, after you have your first income that's independent of your family. So, a side gig or part-time job, anything that's consistent, and it can be pretty small. But also, along with having your first job, you want to take on a responsibility financially. So take on one of your bills, right? So maybe your phone bill, uh, maybe your car payment if your parents have helped you finance a car, maybe. Um, take on a bill, right? And have begun giving as part of your financial plan, right? So um, both the Dave Ramsey plan and the financial order of operations from the Money Guys, when you dive deeper into it, when they often explain that generosity is built into their plans from day one, right? But they don't make that super explicit on the marketing material, for instance. And so, but that's what a lot of this podcast is going to be about, is raising up a generation who's intentional and therefore generous with the resources that God gives them. And so I want to go ahead and say, I don't think you have to be making very much money, right, to be giving a percentage of that to your local church. And if not a local church, then some cause that you are passionate about. So I'm stating it now, and it will be true for the rest of the phases as well. So taking on one financial responsibility, such as a phone bill, a car bill, insurance, something like that, right? That you are literally taking off of your parents and responsible for paying. This starts the muscle memory of money actually coming out of your account for things that are supporting you, and you're giving a percentage of what you earn, right? Um, and that leaves us on to phase three, because as you progress, and if you are, for instance, working with your parents on a plan to get out of the house and within a year or something like that, or 6 months, maybe you're not going to college, but your parents are like, we want you to be independent. We want you to have a plan. This can be your plan. The next step is to, right, increase your income a little bit, probably, or well, not and start taking on more responsibility. So this could look like taking on an entire area of finances, such as, taking over all bills related to your car payment, your car insurance, the gas, right? So you're taking over a whole area of your finances. Or it could be that maybe you've moved out and you have income coming in, and so maybe your parents support a lot of your bills, your rent, a lot of the things that are coming out for school, but you are responsible for your day-to-day spending. So think your groceries, your um, gas, your entertainment, things like that. The day-to-day spending. That to me is basically like an entire category in and of itself. And so anything from that, taking on, say 30% of your finance, 30 to 40% of your of the finances that relate to you specifically, and taking that upon yourself through your income, is phase 3, all the way through, taking up like 90% or 95% of your taking care of your own bills, up to like 95%. So again, the goal is progression. The goal is moving forward and taking on that responsibility yourself, because here's the deal. A lot of times parents are covering a student's entire lifestyle, for instance, their entire, um, they're taking care of everything, right? And so when the time comes for and they get their own job, they've suddenly not only got to figure out how to manage a full-time income, but they've got to set up their own bills, they've got to set up their own phone, they got to, if they want to be independent, they've got to do a bunch of things. And so what ends up happening is there's this enmeshment that happens between the child and the parent that makes it really hard to separate. And so the goal is just gradual separation during a clear plan. So phase 4 is defined by, for me, it is by when you are at a place where you are personally able to, with your income, support being completely independent. So you could move out with roommates, for instance, or get married or whatever. You could, and you could cover all of your bills. Maybe you cover at least the 30-40% now, and you could cover the rest of your expenses, but maybe you're choosing not to because your parents are generously allowing you to continue to live with them while you save up for your launch goals. Maybe you're about to get married and they're letting you stay there and save money until then, or whatever. There's got to be a clear reason and plan behind it, but you are intentionally staying with your family to reduce your costs and saving what you would have been spending, for instance, on rent. You're saving that for a launch goal, and the launch goal could be, you know, 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. So you're already starting out with an emergency fund. It could be paying off a major debt. It could be saving and paying for a wedding, right? Whatever your launch goals are, you are intentionally conserving that income by staying with your parents, but you are in a position where you could pull the trigger and be completely independent. You don't have to be like independent as in you can live by yourself. It can be with roommates, right? And you have a timeline for when that's going to happen, right? And I understand some families are going to be like, look, there's no point in my child moving out until they're married, basically, and they'll stay with us until then, and that's fine, But, um, but again, that's an intentional choice you're making, not just something that's happening as a circumstance, right? And then phase 5, of course, is complete independence, meaning you pay all your bills. They come out of your account, right? You have full-time work. You are contributing, you're giving, right, a portion, and you are working through a plan such as the baby steps or the financial order of operations to put yourself into a better position for tomorrow. So, obviously phase 1 complete total dependence, but you are intentionally learning, you're strategizing for what you're going to do as soon as you start making income, right? All the way through phase 5, where you are out on your own, even if you're with roommates, but you are paying for your own life, right? You have severed ties financially, and that doesn't mean that you, well, it's not like you don't need your parents anymore. And it's not like they can't still help you occasionally, but you don't need it, right, to survive on your own. Um, and we talked in the last episode about why that's important, and why the first thing we need is to be dependent on the Lord before before we can explore the importance of independence, right? So thank you for listening to those. I hope that you will email me. My email will be in the description, or leave a review, leave a comment describing your thoughts on this. Are you currently in one of these phases? Do you need more clarity? Should I work on something on another angle of these phases that can make them more helpful, right? So you tell me, help me refine this. And I just want to remind you guys that the goal of this is to be self-sufficient, yes, but also the main goal is that we can be stewards of the resources that God is giving us. And for a lot of people, when they hit full-time employment, for instance, if they graduate, or they graduate from high school and get full-time employment, they're not able to make the best use of that money, of that resource, because they don't know the basics and because they don't have a plan. My goal is to help you with both. And so I hope that you can use this to communicate with your parents even, right? Use this framework to work with your parents on a progression, right? And if you're a parent listening to this and you're like, man, I've got a 25-year-old that I'm really ready to leave the nest, make a plan based on these phases so that there is progression, right? That there's mercy and time to launch, right? Without just straight kicking them out with no foundation. So, of course, there is a lot of education that I hope to provide during this podcast, and strategies, right? But this can be the framework so that we have language to talk about what phase you might be in when you're implementing these things, right? Something I didn't touch on when I was going through the phases, but obviously you want to, during the phases, you want to go ahead and start using a budget that works for you, and getting the muscle memory for that, right? Setting up your accounts structure to be how it should be. When you get full-time income, it's just like turning up a dial on a well-oiled machine, right? So thank you for joining me on this episode. Because this has been, it's been a rallying point for me, right? As a content provider, as a coach, right? Trying to keep my focus on what matters, because it's in the financial space, it's so easy to get caught up in numbers and logic and forget that we have a God that we are stewarding our resources for, and that is the true reason. He is the one who gives us the ability to get wealth, the Bible says. And so it is for his kingdom and for his glory. And so I just want to close out again with this verse from Be Thou My Vision. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and thou only, first in my heart. High King of heaven, my treasure thou art. So thank you. Hope you'll join me next week. Remember to share this, like if it's on YouTube, comment if it's on your podcast platform, and share it with somebody who needs to hear this kind of content. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.